I'm freaking out. Why am I freaking out? Because it's the Mid-Year Book Freakout Tag. Hello book friends, I'm Jen and welcome to my reading life. Today I am here to do the Mid-Year Book Freakout Tag. I did a quarterly reading wrap up at the end of the first quarter of this year, and I had originally planned to do just another quarterly wrap up this quarter, but then I discovered the Mid-Year Book Freakout Tag, which is basically a wrap up of the first 6 months of the year, and so I thought it would be fun to do this tag instead. So let's dive on into the questions and find out if I'm freaking out or not about the first half of my reading this year. I'm not really sure why it's called the Mid-Year Book Freakout Tag. Am I supposed to be freaking out? I don't really feel like I'm freaking out. Oh well, let's get going. Before I get started, I should say I'm really terrible about figuring out who originated tags, and I know this tag has been going for years and years and years, so apologies to the creator of this tag, but I was unable to find who that was. And so somebody created this tag and it's very fun. And I know lots of booktubers have done this over the years, and this is my very first time giving it a go. So let's get started with the questions. The first question is the best book you've read so far this year. Well, of course, if you know me by now, I can't possibly pick just one book. I have 3 books that I would say right now are at the top of my list in terms of making it onto my favorites for this year. And I have a short story collection, a fiction novel, and a mystery. And that pretty much sums up my reading life this year so far, though I probably should have a middle grade in here too, because I read some really fabulous middle grade books, but these 3 definitely rose to the top for me. And the first one is The Blue Bedroom by Rosamund Pilcher, and this is a collection of her short stories. And I've read a few different collections of her short stories, and this is by far my favorite. I loved every story in here, and that is so rare to say for a short story collection. And I really can't recommend this enough. If you are a Rosamund Pilcher fan, then this is the short story collection to try. I highly recommend. And then next is Victoria Cottage by D.E. Stevenson. And if you've been watching my videos for any length of time, you know that I love D.E. Stevenson. Both she and Rosamund Pilcher are 2 of my favorite authors, and Victoria Cottage was such a lovely, lovely read. And in this we follow Carolyn Daring, and this is the start of a trilogy. I've read the first 2 books in the series, so Victoria Cottage and Music in the Hills, and I have the 3rd in the series still to read, which is Winter and Rough Weather, and I absolutely adore this. Well, I liked Music in the Hills. This book just captured my heart. Carolyn is a new favorite character for me, and this is the story of her life with her children, who are mostly grown, and you know, they live in Victoria Cottage in a small village in England, and it's just about their lives, and it's just the best kind of cozy read. Grab a cup of tea, curl up with this book, and escape into D.E. Stevenson's world that she's created here for Carolyn and her family. Absolutely loved it. And my 3rd favorite book of the year so far has to be The Unexpected Mrs. Polifax by Dorothy Gilman. As you know by now, I am having a love affair with Mrs. Polifax, and this mystery series, it's a mystery series, but it probably falls more into the spy novel category. Mrs. Polifax is in her 60s, and she's a widow, and she has grown children and grandchildren, and she just gets very tired of, I think, going to her gardening club, and she decides to go offer her services to the CIA. And surprisingly enough, they take her up on that, and she becomes a courier for the CIA. And in this first book, she ends up in Mexico, and things don't go according to plan, but Mrs. Polifax is intrepid and she is spunky, and it is just a pure joy to follow along with her stories. I've read this one and the second book, and I have plans to read through as many of the books as I can this year because I just love them. They're wonderful. Okay, so the next question is the best sequel I've read so far this year. And for sure, that has to be, setting Mrs. Polifax aside, because I can't use her for every answer. I mean, I guess I could, but I'm not going to. I'm trying to give a little variety to this. But these absolutely fall into my favorites for the first half of the year, and that is the Emma M. Lyon sequels. I have read volumes 2 through 5 so far. There's still 6 and 7, and I believe volume 8 is coming out later this year or early next year. I need to look into that. But I just adore this series. Plus, look at how beautiful this rainbow of colors is. The first book is green. I don't have that book in my hand since it's the first book in the series and not the sequels. I would say each of these sequels was absolutely wonderful. I love how this story is progressing, and I cannot wait to find out what happens to Emma in the subsequent books. And it's one of those series where I really just want to keep picking up one book after another and just reading them and kind of binging my way through the series. But then I also don't want it to be over, even though I can reread it. I know that, but you know, so I'm sort of delaying my gratification by not binge reading this series, even though it is really, really hard not to. And anytime I finish a book, I feel like my first inclination is to either pick up the next book in this series or pick up the next book in the Mrs. Polifax series. So clearly I am having a love affair with these two series right now. Yes. Highly, highly recommend. This is such a quirky, fun series that seems on the surface like it's just a book about a girl in the late 1800s in England, and it's so much more than that. Cannot. I'm just going to say that over and over again in this video, as I say it in all my videos. Can't recommend these enough. I love them. And if you love the kinds of things that I like to read, you will completely enjoy the Emma M. Lyon series. For sure. Okay, I gotta put these books somewhere because otherwise the stack is gonna fall over. Okay, the next question is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. And I have 2 that I actually have in my possession that are fairly new releases that I really want to read but haven't gotten to yet because look at all these books I have on my shelves that I still also need to read. But the first one is The Night War by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. I absolutely adore The War That Saved My Life and The War I Finally Won. That duology is just perfection for a middle grade little series duology. And I love Kimberly Brubaker Bradley's writing, and The Night War takes us back, I believe, to World War II. Yeah, it's 1942, and we're following a young Jewish girl, Miriam, and she escapes from Paris and ends up in a small French village. And then I think we just follow along with, obviously, she's going to be, you know, trying to hide from the Nazis. So sounds like it might be a little bit intense, but I feel like I can trust Kimberly Brubaker Bradley to not make it too intense. That's one of the things I love about reading middle grade, is that they can take a really difficult topic and make it so much more palatable, especially if you are a sensitive soul like I am. So I am definitely looking forward to this one. And then the second new release I have that I'm looking forward to reading is The Hunter by Tana French. And this is the second in the, why can I never remember his name? Cal Hooper. This is the second in the Cal Hooper series. I assume there's going to, I think there's going to be more. I think Tana French has said, I believe one of you told me that Tana French said there's going to be at least another one in the series. So yay for that, because Cal Hooper is a Chicago police officer who has retired early. Well, he's a detective, but he's retired early, and he has moved to Ireland and bought a farm in the middle of nowhere, basically. He has a relationship with a woman named Lena, and he meets a young girl who's named Trey. Yes. There's a young teenage girl named Trey who he becomes friends with. This all happens in the first book. And then in this one, we're following Trey mostly, her father, who is a bit, he's not around. He's an absentee father, but he returns to town with like a millionaire. They're gonna look for gold in the town or township area where they live. They feel like there's gold in them thar hills, and this is going to follow what happens. But Cal doesn't necessarily think Trey's father has the best of motivations, and we shall go from there. So I'm planning to read this summer. It's set during a heat wave in Ireland, so feels like a good summer read where it's very hot. The next question is, what is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year? And I have 3 that I'm looking forward to. All of them happen to be mysteries. The first is We Solve Murders by Richard Osman. Richard Osman is best known for the Thursday Murder Club, which I've read all of those books. Definitely enjoyed them. I feel like it's a series that gets better and better as it goes along. But We Solve Murders is a new series that he's starting, and I don't know that much about it, but because I've enjoyed the Thursday Murder Club, I'm definitely looking forward to reading that. There's a cat on the cover, and yeah, so I'm here for that. I just found out that this author has a new book coming out in this series, and that is Death at the Sign of the Rook by Kate Atkinson. And this is the latest installment in the Jackson Brodie mystery series. I love Jackson Brodie. It is a fantastic mystery series, and I think everyone else, thought that Kate Atkinson was done writing Jackson Brodie, but apparently she's not, and I'm so excited. I actually have one other book in this series that I missed reading, which I think is Started Early and Took the Dog. I don't know, for some reason I didn't read that one. Somehow I missed it. So I'm thinking maybe I need to pick that one up and read it just to get back in Jackson's world, and then I can read the new one when it comes out, I believe in the fall. And then another book coming out in the fall, which I've already pre-ordered, is The Grey Wolf by Louise Penny. This is the latest installment in the Inspector Gamache mystery series, and as always, I just adore Louise Penny. I feel like she just writes exactly the mystery series I want to be reading. I love Armand Gamache. He is one of my favorite literary characters, and very excited to be back in the world of Three Pines. Your biggest disappointment so far this year? Well, 100% that has to be the ballet storybooks that I have read or tried to read this year. The first one being Pirouette by Susan Scarlett, which is one of the pen names of Noel Streatfeild. And I had incredibly, incredibly high hopes for this. I picked this for the Cozy Reader Book Club to read, and it was so disappointing. It was filled with just annoying, unlikable characters, and I think the only person in this I really liked was the younger brother. I felt so bad for him, but yes, this was not good. I've kept this one because I'm collecting all the Dean Street Press books, but otherwise I would probably give this away if I wasn't doing that. But I do love this cover. The cover is beautiful. And, but yes, the interior of this book, completely disappointing. As was White Swan, Black Swan by Adrienne Sharp. I just talked about this in my May wrap up. It was a collection of short stories, all set in the ballet world. I read the first 3 or 4 stories in the collection, and I just decided they just weren't grabbing me. And it wasn't that they were terrible, but I'd read another short story collection that was much better, and I had no desire to continue on. And so that book I did actually just donate to a little free library. Spoiler, I have a little free library tour coming up next week. And yes, so that book, maybe someone else will love it, but it wasn't the greatest. And so I DNF'd it. But those were so disappointing. And again, if anyone knows of any books set in the ballet world that you've really enjoyed, they can be novels, they can be nonfiction, they can be middle grade, they can be mysteries, they can be really anything. Sign me up. Let me know your favorites. The next question is, what is your biggest surprise so far this year? And I have two, both of which came out of my reading from middle grade March. And the first big surprise to me was Heidi by Joanna Spyri. I love this book. I just love this book. I adored Heidi. I was 100% invested in her story. I listened to the audiobook, but I absolutely had to get myself an edition to have on my shelf. And I've already mentioned I have plans to reread this next middle grade March with one of my friends on Bookstagram, and I cannot wait. I absolutely loved Heidi. It is 100% a classic of children's literature, and I cannot recommend it enough. If you like a plucky heroine, Heidi is for you. And then the next book that was such a surprise to me was a nonfiction middle grade, and that was Some Writer, The Story of E.B. White by Melissa Sweet. And this book, I know I've talked about it before. I know I raved about it already, but it is such a delight. It is done in pictures and collages and words as well. Obviously, it's not just pictures. There's plenty of the story of E.B. White's life, but I am such a huge E.B. White fan now, even more so than I already was, having read Charlotte's Web and Stuart Little. After I read this, it prompted me to read The Trumpet of the Swan. I have a book of E.B. White's letters sitting on my nightstand, which I really haven't been reading, but I really do want to read. I also grabbed The Second Tree from the Corner, I think that's what it's called, which is another collection of writings, essays, and things by E.B. White. Definitely having a little bit of a love affair with him, and if you loved Charlotte's Web as a kid, pick this up and read it. It is utterly fantastic. I, again, cannot recommend it enough. The next question is a favorite new, either a debut or a new to you author. And for me, it is a toss-up between, let me grab two of their books. And for me, it is a toss-up between Dorothy Gilman and Beth Brower, the two of the series that I am just loving this year, and I adore both of their writing, and I think I want to read everything they've written. Well, Beth Brower has maybe written some things that I think she's written some YA things. I'm not a huge YA fan, so I may not read everything she's written, but I will certainly read everything that she has written in the Emma M. Lyon series for sure. So not sure how long that series is going to be, but I am here for it. And there are umpteen, I don't know how many books in the Mrs. Polifax series. And Dorothy Gilman, I think, has also written some standalone different mysteries and things, and I am definitely going to check those out as well. The next question is newest fictional crush. And I was like thinking about the books that I've read so far this year, and I don't know that I have like fictional crushes. If we're talking about like a fictional crush on someone who you'd be like attracted to in the way you would a crush, I don't know. I mean, really, I'd have to say the next question, which is newest favorite character. Those characters I definitely have crushes on, because I am here for everything about those characters. So let's just skip to that one, and we'll kind of meld these two questions together, because again, I don't know. I mean, I don't really think I get crushes on fictional characters. At least not of anything I've read so far this year. I do like the men who are in the Emma M. Lyon series, but do I have crushes on them? I don't think so. I don't think so. So anyway, so as I said, the next question is, what is your newest favorite character? And I think I have two. Again, I'm going back to my favorite books so far that I've read this year, and I'm gonna have to say Mrs. Polifax and Carolyn Daring from Victoria Cottage. the two of them, like, I want to be friends with both of them. And yes, I want to go have tea with Carolyn, and I want to go on an adventure with Mrs. Polifax. So absolutely 100% new favorite characters. Next up, the question is a book that made you cry. And both of these books, I would say they were like so heartwarming in different parts of them that I, definitely welled up. But it's not like these books made me sob. None of the things I've read so far this year make me want to like cry because I'm so sad for the characters or anything like that. But both of them are middle grade books because nothing tugs at my heartstrings more than a middle grade book. And the first is Wonder by R.J. Palacio. And I had a little bit of trouble getting into this, but once we start to hear things from his sister's perspective, Augie's sister, then I really got invested in the story and I really started to enjoy Augie even more. And it's just such a wonderful story about belonging, about friendship, about family, about coming into your own when you feel clearly so different from everyone else. And I think even kids who don't have anything necessarily physically wrong with them can still feel like outsiders. And I feel like this book does a really great job of helping you understand that you can find your place in the world. And that's a wonderful sentiment. And then the second book that made me tear up was Because of Winn-Dixie by Kate DiCamillo. Again, this is sort of about like found family and, anytime there's an animal involved, that's just going to make me get a little teary. But I loved this. I thought it was so sweet, so charming. Kate DiCamillo is a fantastic middle grade author. So if you've never read her, I highly recommend. On the flip side of a book that made you cry, the next question is a book that made you happy. And I have three. The first is one I've already mentioned, which is Heidi by Joanna Spyri. And again, it's so lovely. Joanna Spyri's descriptions of the Swiss Alps are just, they're so lovely. Nothing has ever made me want to go hang out with a herd of goats more than Heidi. But this is just such a lovely, uplifting read. If you need to feel happy, Heidi will help you with that. And then next is an author that absolutely will make you feel happy reading any of his books, but that is P.G. Wodehouse. I read Something Fresh, which is the first novel in the Blandings Castle series. I have a collection here of the first three novels in that series. Something Fresh was such a delight, and I have read a Jeeves and Wooster book and loved that one as well, but oh, this book was so funny. There is a scene, I don't want to spoil it, but there's a scene towards the end of the book and it is just laugh out loud hilarious. So again, you need to feel happy. P.G. Wodehouse is your writer. And then lastly, it's in the title. So absolutely this book made me happy, and that was 14,000 Things to Be Happy About by Barbara Ann Kipfer. And I've been reading this book when I talked about it when I wrapped it up in April, I think. I said I've been reading this book for years and years and years and years. I mean, it is so thick, and I would just periodically dip in and out of it, and it's just lists and lists and lists of things to be happy about. And if you need something to pick you up, this book will absolutely do it. And again, you can just kind of dip in and out of it as you like. And yes, I will always have this book at hand when I need something to give me a little boost. And then the next question is the most beautiful book you bought or received so far this year. And I have a few. Obviously, Heidi, I picked this book because I just thought the cover was absolutely gorgeous. This is one of the Puffin and Bloom Classics collection. Love it. So gorgeous. And then the next two were two that I just lucked out in finding such beautiful and pristine editions of these. And these are the two Beverly Nichols books that I found, Sunlight on the Lawn and Laughter on the Stairs. This one I found in the library bookstore, and this one I found at the library book sale. I feel like maybe the same person donated these and they just ended up in 2 different places, but yay for me. So now I just need to find, I think there's a third, I think this one's a trilogy. These 2 are part of a trilogy. So I think I just need to find the 3rd one in the trilogy, and I'll have them all. And if I can find it in this beautiful, pristine editions to match this, I'll be a happy, happy camper. The last couple of books that I purchased that I just think are gorgeous are these, again, Wordsworth editions. And the first is Emma. I love these editions. The back always has a quote on there. This one says, "You must be the best judge of your own happiness." And then I also bought The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. And again, there's the quote on the back, and it says, "It is quite a 3-pipe problem, and I beg that you won't speak to me for 50 minutes. So those are, I think, some of the beautiful books that I've added to my collection this year. And then the last question is, what books do you need to read before the end of the year? Well, my answer to that is so many. Not really, but it does sometimes feel that way. I'd say the books that I really need to read before the end of the year are, I need to finish the rest of my TBR 24 in 24. And as of right now, I am exactly halfway done with the TBR 24 in 24 challenge. So far I've read 12 books off of the challenge this year, and I'm actually in the middle of the 13th book. So I will have that one done in June for sure. And I'm hoping to get to one more before the end of June. We will see if that happens. That might have to carry over into July, but hopefully I can at least start it before the end of this month, which will put me in a really good position. So I have then the remaining books to get through by the end of the year. I also need to continue the Lord Peter Wimsey series. The 5 Red Herrings is the book for June that I need to read, and I should be starting this probably next week, and then I'm just going to continue on, and I should finish up with this in November because there are 11 novels in the Lord Peter Wimsey series. I'm not reading the short stories, which I keep getting asked about. I'm sure I will read them at some point, but this year I am just focusing on the full-length novels, and that should take me through November. So I will finish up with those. And then the last little kind of challenge that I have put on myself this year is to read the Little House on the Prairie books. The 5, I believe, that I owned before the start of the year. So I read Little House in the Big Woods, Little House on the Prairie, On the Banks of Plum Creek, and I need to read By the Shores of Silver Lake and The Long Winter before the end of the year. That is my goal, and I've actually acquired a couple more books in the Little House series, which I'm going to continue on with reading, and maybe I'll get to them this year, maybe I won't. That's totally fine. They will still be there next year and the year after and the year after that. But I do want to get through those last 2 books that I have had on my shelf for a really long time and just have made it a goal. One, because I'm just enjoying the series so much. It is so delightful. And I know I say delightful a lot, but it really is. I just love the Little House books. So that is it for the mid-year freakout tag. I don't really think I'm freaking out too much. I think I am really having a fantastic reading year. I've read a lot of books so far this year. That will definitely taper off towards the end of the year. I will not keep up with the pace of reading that I had at the beginning of this year, or really middle grade March and April. For some reason, I had just big reading months, those months this year, and that's not the norm for me. So I will probably end up I'll probably end up a little bit over where I've been reading the past couple of years, but it's not like I'm going to read 200 books by the end of the year by any means, even though I've read over 100 books so far as of today. Eek. Just barely, 101, I think, which is crazy to me. Don't get me wrong. But I would love to hear your answers to the mid-year book freakout tag questions. So if you have a booktube channel and you haven't done this tag yet, consider yourself tagged. And if you don't have a booktube channel, I would love to hear your answers to some of these questions down in the comments of this video. So yeah, pick a few, answer them, and let me know a little bit about how your reading life has been going so far this year. You know I love chatting with all of you in the comments. If you could give this video a like and hit that subscribe button, that would be fantastic. And as always, thank you so much for being here, and I'll be back with another video very soon. Bye!